No, you got to speak right into it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Bob Reich, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you for inviting me, but I also want to thank all of you for being here. This is important. It's important to our democracy. You may not know it, but merely the fact of this movement is beginning to change the tenor of debate and discussion in this country. I mean, people are now beginning to talk about the concentration of income and wealth and power in America in ways that were unacceptable just 5 weeks ago. People are beginning to say and understand that one of the reasons the economy is so bad is because so much income and wealth is going to the top, that the vast middle class and the working class don't have enough purchasing power to keep the economy going. This is not a matter of subtle economics. This is just straight economics. You can't have a productive economy. You can't have an economy that creates jobs. You can't have an economy that grows if most people in it are stretched thin and don't have the wherewithal to buy, the wherewithal to make a good life for themselves and their children. And the other thing that you all are beginning to get everybody else to talk about in this country is that our democracy is threatened when so much income and wealth goes to the top that power also goes to the top. When there's so much money in Washington that the average person's voice can't get through it. We have a Supreme Court that decided in that Citizens United case absurdly that the First Amendment guarantees and makes corporations people? I'll believe that a corporation is a person when Georgia and Texas execute a corporation. Now, here's the point, and I want to open it up to your questions in just a moment. The most important point is that in my view, this movement represents America. This movement represents what we all care about. This movement represents the best tradition of Americans who care about each other, not just about themselves. This movement represents the best of America that says this country and this democracy and this economy are not just for a handful of people at the top, they're for all of us. And I really do believe that we are on the cusp, we're on the edge of a fundamental change in this society. Because, and I'll tell you why, because this movement is spreading around the country. It can't be stopped.
Around the world!
And indeed around the world. And I'll tell you something else. When politicians in Washington or elsewhere around the world, when they see the people are rising, they begin to pay attention. And that is the only thing that gets the politicians to pay attention.
And when their money starts going to different places than they anticipated.
So let me take your question. Yeah.
Why not occupy the United Nations?
Why not occupy the United Nations? Well, occupy whatever you want to occupy.
Yeah, they're not very powerful.
Yeah.
This is not acceptable.
Well, I'll tell you, in my view, this movement has had an uncanny ability to go and do exactly what it needs to do, and that is spread around this country. Not just be a Washington movement, not just be a New York movement, but be an American and being a world movement. And that is what is getting attention. Yeah.
I'm not trying
Cloud.
to change you, but I want to ask you to answer a question that has come up to me because I listen to dozens and hundreds. We can't hear anymore.
I'm going to repeat Cloud's question.
Should we reform it or should we throw it out and make a new one?
Should we be for it or should we throw it out? Reform.
Make a new one.
Should we reform it? That's a big difference. Should we reform it or we should throw it out and make a new one? Well, it depends a little bit on what it is. I mean, in terms of our
throw it out.
And Cloud, in terms of our economy, I think what this movement is capable of doing is saving capitalism. saving capitalism. Now, some of you, maybe you say, oh, I don't want to save capitalism. But I'll tell you, capitalism every once in a while needs saving. That's what the progressive movement did between 1900 and 1916. It saved capitalism. That's what the New Deal did in the 1930s. It saved capitalism. That's what we do in this country again and again when capitalism goes crazy.
We save it.
When too much goes to the top, when there is corruption, when basically people get a sense that the entire system is rigged, what do the people do? We save the system.
But we got to vote first.
I have a question.
And we have to, yes, and we also have to, I'm going to take another question, but you're absolutely right. That means political engagement, political involvement, voting, but it means a grassroots movement. Grassroots movement.
I have a question. So Obama's cabinet is all bankers. How do we occupy Obama?
The question is, how do we occupy Obama?
Obama's occupied.
Well, let me just say this. One of the big failures, in my view, of progressives and liberals and leftists and independents and everybody else, of people who really understand about the future of this country, one of the great failures is we have not been as active as we need to be in order to push Obama and push the Democrats and push people in Washington in the direction they should be pushed. And I think that's changing now. Yes.
Do you think that the Federal Reserve is the root cause of a lot of the problems?
The question is the Federal Reserve the root cause of the problems?
Yes.
No. The root cause of the problem, I'll tell you, is, number one, the excesses on Wall Street, the carelessness, the malfeasance, the disregard of the duty and responsibility of professionals on Wall Street, number one. Number two, a lot of people in Washington who were supposed to be regulators who are not doing their jobs. Number three, an ingrown system between Washington and New York and Wall Street in which there is a lot of political money going to an awful lot of people.
And a lot of kids getting their heads kicked in.
And a failure of a political system that is fundamentally now being run by money. And that's what we've got to stop.
But isn't the Federal Reserve a private bank and all money start out as debt?
The Federal Reserve needs to be more accountable and more transparent, and we need to know what's going on there, undoubtedly.
I have a question.
Yes.
Will you come to City Hall for the Police Commission meeting at 5:30 and tell them that it's important for us to be here?
Yeah. Yes.
Do you think, can you point to a time in American history when money was out of politics?
I can point to a time. Can I point to a time in American history where money was out of politics? Well, I can tell you that up until William McKinley's campaign in 1900, there was not a lot of money in politics. William McKinley's campaign manager said, we are going to get money into this politics, and we are going to go after the big money. And then Teddy Roosevelt came along, and yes, Teddy Roosevelt did depend on money, but Teddy Roosevelt said, no, I'm going to break up the trusts. I'm going to make this country work for people again. And Woodrow Wilson said, I am going to be dependent on some money because I can't do it without it, but I'm going to work for the people, and I'm going to create an income tax, and I'm going to create a Food and Drug Administration, and I'm going to create an antitrust law that absolutely prevents the big guys from getting too big. And FDR, yes, he needed some money. He had a lot of independent money himself. But he said, I am on the side of the average working people. I'm going to allow trade unions to function. I'm going to encourage trade unionism in this country. I'm going to have a 40-hour work week. I'm going to have Social Security. And I'm going to make unemployment insurance. You see, in this country, we have done some important things. Progressives have progressed.
Yes.
And it's time to do that again.
Yes.
Yeah!
Yes, sir.
Comment on tax policy.
Can I comment on tax policy?
It seems to me that is one of the root problems, maybe one of the things that needs to be
Yeah.
reformed.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, let me.
Just a proposal, a physical proposal. If people sit down, and if you sit up,
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's hard for me to stand up.
You stand up well, my friend.
There you go. But I'm going to try standing up. And
Thank you.
All right, the question was taxes. Let me just say, this is kind of a teach-in. Isn't this good? This is kind of a teach-in. I haven't done this in about 40 years. But let's do it. So, now, when I'm talking about, I'm talking about taxes now. Between 1946 and 1980, the minimal top tax rate of the rich, on the rich, was 70%. Under Dwight David Eisenhower, who nobody would accuse of being a socialist, the top tax rate on the very rich was 91%. Right now, the top tax rate is 35%, but we know because so much of the wealth comes in the form of capital gains taxes, for the very top, it's closer to 17%. I mean, this, you know, think about it for a second. And I'm gonna be a little bit, I don't want your eyes to glaze over, but not everybody needs to know these facts. The reality is that right now, 21% of total national income is going to the top 1%. Now compare that to the 1970s. In the late 1970s, 9% of total national income was going to the top 1%. Right now, the top 1% owns about 35% of America. Wow. The 400 richest families in America own more of America than the bottom 150 million people in America. Now what this means, look at what this means is, do I say that again?
Yeah, say it again.
Okay, it's important. The 400 richest people in America own more of America in terms of wealth than the bottom 150 million put together.
Yep.
Now, what about the tax rate again? The taxes are lower on them than they have been in over 30 years. We are now at a time in this country's history when we have a huge budget deficit, and average working people are being asked to sacrifice enormously. And here's another very important data. Barbara, you got to get this down? No, you got it down. Oh, the rest of that. Top 400 family, no, individuals. Let's go individuals. Richest 400 individuals have greater wealth than the bottom 150 million. Combined. But the other thing I want everybody to focus on is right now, 37% of families with young children in this country are in poverty. 37% of families with young children in this country are in poverty. We have not seen that degree of poverty in this country. In the face of the richest country, we are the richest country in history. We're richer than we've ever been. Don't fall for the line that we're poor. We are rich. But we've got to act like a rich country. We've got to be a rich country. We've got to be the great country we always have been. This is why your movement, our movement, the Occupy movement, is really about American patriotism. It's about us caring about each other. We don't believe that this country is about just individuals who care about themselves. We believe this country is about opportunity, investment in education and infrastructure, making sure right now we could have a WPA, a Civilian Conservation Corps. We could be putting to work millions of the people who right now have no jobs. There's no reason we don't. Other questions? Look at Wall Street. Wall Street succeeded in putting enough loopholes in that Wall Street financial regulation that it is really not yet regulated. We need to resurrect the Glass-Steagall Act. We need to put a sharp boundary. And you know, isn't it amazing? Here's an example. A few years ago, if you said Glass-Steagall Act, nobody would know what you're talking about. The fact that I can say it and you all applaud. Okay, the Glass-Steagall Act separates commercial from investment banking. It says if you are a depositor and you're putting your money in the bank, your money is not going to be used for gambling. Your money is not going to be used for speculative purposes in a great casino called the financial market. And we need to have that barrier. Otherwise, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is what just happened with Bank of America. They took a lot of their risky derivatives. Now, derivatives, don't get your eyes glazed over. Derivatives are just bets. They're just bets on financial transactions. They took some of the riskiest derivatives and put it into a division that has a lot of your deposits and my deposits at Bank of America.